All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Kim, Barb, and Tony, as always, for joining and kind of working, and Kim for getting us introduced and welcoming everybody in. Barb and Tony for kind of working behind the scenes and being present with us at the user group and handling questions and things like that. So much appreciated. It is absolutely positively a team effort and couldn't do it without everybody on this team, but in particular for today, a big thanks to Kim and Barb and Tony. Welcome. This is the May 7th, 2024 user group. Got a good agenda for you today. We are very, very, very focused here these last couple of weeks since we last met in March about and working and configuring and spending a lot of time on all sorts of things, but in particular, electronic invoicing. So I'm very excited to kind of demo that. And you'll see that kind of at the end of the session today when we get through a couple notes. So we've got a couple news and notes I want to go through. We'll go through the production release, next up issues, enhancements, high priority issues, kind of some things we've been working on lately, and then again dive into electronic invoicing. As I mentioned before the recording started, when Kim was welcoming everybody into the user group today, since we last showed you, we kind of showed you an out of the box view of electronic invoicing back in March. So if you're curious, always a reminder that these sessions are recorded and they're posted on the EVA website. You can go back and look at our March user group session. But since March, we've done a little designing, worked with some folks kind of across the Commonwealth and here at DGS, got a little feedback, and we've done some configuring. So we're getting much, much, much closer to what electronic invoicing is going to look like. And I'm excited to show you that today. So more to come on that. First thing though, let's dig through some news and notes. This page, for those of you that have been attending the user group for the last several months or maybe last several years, depending on your level of experience and how long you've been coming. I've been slapping in our links kind of from a release management perspective. Our release notes for all of the releases that we've done into EVA, or the enhancements and fixes and all that fun stuff, are located at that address. Also, on the resources drop down off the homepage, you'll see the EVA release notes. And if you are so inclined, you can read every little minutia and detail about all the fun things that we're doing, but always a good reference for everything that's going on. And then again, one of the things we've done with our team, and big thanks to Tony for organizing this, is we have kind of EVA tips. And that page is linked here as well, also available off the EVA homepage, kind of in our training area where we have our training materials located. And you can pop over there for some handy items, to help make EVA easier to use, or a reminder and things like that. So always want to link those, and we leave those kind of in the presentation so you guys can see those and grab those links for reference purposes. News and notes. Talked about this in March. This is the big one. We've got it scheduled. It's live. Some of you could care less. Some of you could be very excited about this change, but I absolutely want to announce it. We've had for years here on my team, on the EVA team here at DPS, a large dollar approver that fires at 1 million and above. We did that just for kind of a sanity check, to try to stop errors and things like that going through. When people miskey something, get a quantity wrong, a price wrong, for something that should be below $1 million, but we somehow make a mistake and it goes through. We were kind of like a fail safe. Well, we've got mature enough, talked about this in March, we're removing that fail safe, wanted to make everyone aware of that. This change now, we've got it scheduled. It will be applied overnight on the 30th. So Recs created after May 30th will not have the large dollar approver in place. They're just going to go on through. So just please be aware of that. I will tell you, Tony will tell you, our two security officers, Yana Urbe and Sherry Mickens Green, will tell you uh, that we catch usually a couple every month, sometimes every week, where there was a true honest mistake. It was supposed to be a $600 order for janitorial supplies, and it ends up being 6 million. So got to watch for that. You and your staff as requisitioners, also all of you guys that are approvers need to watch for that as well. We will be sending an email communication. It'll come under Pete Stamps, the DPS director's signature. That'll go out to procurement directors across the Commonwealth as a reminder the week of May 20th, the week of May 20th. And Kim has a set date that she's kind of decided she wants to do that. But again, there will be an additional comms coming out, but I wanted to talk about it here in the user group as well. So the guardrails are coming off. Everybody be aware of what's going on in an additional comms, but cleaning up a little red tape for you guys. And I know there's a lot of you out there that will be happy to get us out of your business. But again, once we're out of your business, just make sure you're taking care of your business and making sure that the dollar amounts are accurate and that your requisitions and subsequent purchase orders are been accurately keyed in. So just a note there. Moving on into our release and some highlights. I'm going to touch on just some high level stuff from March, April, and then what's coming up in the May timeframe here. We'll also be doing a June/July release. Dates not quite set on that, kind of figuring that out as we go into the summer months. That's going to have a lot of stuff going on because electronic invoicing will be coming in that June/July timeframe. So a little bit different runway there for us as we're giving ourselves a little bit more time to make sure we're nice and clean and have a great electronic invoicing release in that summer time frame, and then prep ourselves going into the rest of 2024 and into 2025 to get that launched and rolled out to all of our agencies here in EVA. And again, I think you're going to find, if you haven't seen the electronic invoicing, I think you're going to find the functionality incredibly easy to use and a big efficiency, not only for you, but for your supplier community as well, and from a transparency perspective. So again, excited to get that going. But let's dig into March. I keep getting it. You can see how focused I am on electronic invoicing. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's talk about March and what went in back in March. Still doing a little work around that first item, but this was just kind of one of those things as we're still doing cleanup from the implementation all the way back in 2022. But we do have that user data in the data warehouse now. There's a couple tweaks and fixes and some things we're doing right now to get that data clean, because the big thing here is for those, I know my internal staff, my security officers, our account executives there on Barb's staff, security officers and data managers across the Commonwealth, and our auditing community is really looking forward to getting our user reports back up on their feet. And that's being able to run user data reports out of the data warehouse. Right now, we're making you kind of come into the EVA UI to get that kind of data. It's not as nice. It doesn't have quite the detail that the data warehouse is going to have. I know there were a handful of high priority fixes that were being worked right now to really get this in shape as our report developers here on the DGS side from Joel Paddo and his team. I'm sure some of you know Joel are working on those. So more good news to come on that over the next couple weeks and months. But we're in a position where we're working on that and making that better and striving to get that information in. So excited about that. We did have a sourcing change. We've been actually seeing this not quite a bit. I don't want to say quite a bit, but occasionally we had seen suppliers and I don't even know how they're able to pull this off, but they're going in and responding to a solicitation, responding to a sourcing event, and they're adding attachments that are completely empty and don't have any data in them, and they're adding those into their responses. Not sure how they're able to pull that off on their side, but we put a warning message in place to at least give the suppliers a notice that, hey, you got a problem here. And you got an attachment that's blank going up on a sourcing event. We just recently, and again, not seeing, for the volume of transactions that we do, we're not seeing a ton of this. We saw a similar situation on the buying side where somebody was creating a sourcing event and loaded up some blank attachments. So again, kind of an odd nuance there. And we're even thinking, well, maybe we can put that same warning message on the buying side. So look for that sometime over the next couple months and getting something in around that. But again, just something to kind of help our suppliers, making sure, again, we're not stopping it from an error perspective, but we are giving them a warning, to let them know they may have a problem with one of their files. And then a big one for those of you guys that do receiving, again, going back to March, the ability to change that method of receiving. Now, you do have to, if you've done any receiving, you do need to return, you need to back out all the receiving. But if you selected to receive by quantity and you've determined, ooh, that's not going to work for us, we actually need to receive by amount, you can return everything and then create a subsequent receipt and actually flip the method of receiving from quantity to amount. So that was a big deal for us, particularly on our receiving module. So again, those are items that went in March. The April release, which we just completed about a week or so ago, we've added, again, one of the things that we're catching up on from the implementation was approval data and getting that into the data warehouse. Now, right now, really the only customized or formal approvals where we're tracking a role or an individual user approving a transaction is one for quick quotes. We have a very basic approval for quick quotes where it's one kind of person or one role that can approve a quick quote. So that's one area where an approval is done. And then the other more complex one is certainly for our requisitions. Our requisitions, as I hope you guys are aware, there's custom approval flow there. So all of you, all the entities have a little bit different nuance of approval when it comes to a requisition. Really cool thing about this change is that pulls those approval details into the data warehouse. And that just makes all our reporting a little bit more robust. And, we just have more details from an approval perspective, who did the approval, when the approval was done. That really enhances what we can do from a reporting perspective when you're running those reports and hitting the data warehouse. That just went in. So again, some work for our reporting team here on the DGS side of the house, but I know they're going to spend time on that over the next couple of weeks and months. And that just opens up all sorts of things for us from a reporting perspective when it comes to approvals. One of the interesting things about this too is, I mentioned that it's quick quote approvals and requisition approvals. Well, there is approval flow or workflow available for pretty much every transaction in the system, from supplier activations to setting a contract to active to sourcing beyond quick quote. There's pretty much not a transaction that doesn't have the ability to have approvals done to it, including electronic invoices, which I'm going to again show you here a little bit towards the end of our meeting today. And this update we've done, if we so choose to, let's say we put custom workflow or we set up some sort of workflow for a sourcing event, we'd be capturing that information in the data warehouse as well. So this really sets us up for future growth, is the point I'm getting to with the work we did here back in April, getting the approval data in the data warehouse. So again, all in all, some good news stories. I know that's not big, huge changes to what you or your staff are seeing on a day-to-day basis, as we still need to roll these reports out and develop the reports. But again, really the user data and approval data, getting that in the data warehouse really sets us up for the future, and just kind of makes the things we can do with our data better. So excited to get those two kind of back end administrative things in place to set us up for future success. And then for those of you that are using approval, staying on the approval topic here, the ability to delegate approval to users who are set up with the employee profile only. We know that we have some approvers in our system that do not serve in a procurement function per se. They're not issuing transactions necessarily, but we have agency heads and maybe chief financial officers and accounts payable staff and folks that maybe aren't generating procurement transactions, but might need to do some level of approval. They can be set up in Eva, and you just give them the employee profile where they can kind of view some things, but they really don't have access to create transactions. And you can delegate approval to them in some situations. And we had a little issue with that, and we corrected that in April as well. So good to get those things out of the way. Moving on, and kind of a couple things we're looking forward to in May. It's a big one in May. Now, again, it doesn't impact a lot of you individually from an entity perspective. It certainly impacts a large volume of transactions. You might have heard me or anybody else in this user group talk about our workload management or queue management functionality that we have available on Eva. Again, small group of entities using it, large volume of transactions. We are adding in some additional logic after the workload management is done. So kind of thinking about a requisitions approval flow, a requisition gets submitted, there's some expenditure limit approvals done. You might have buyer inbox configured, then it goes into your custom approvals. And if you have queue management turned on, it allows the requisitions to queue up, and then managers, workload managers, to kind of come in, see what requisitions have queued up, and then they can assign it to various end users to, kind of balance out the workload or by specialty, commodity, whatever that may be. But then after that was done, and after that final approval was done in the workload management tool, the transaction just kind of went out the door. Even if major changes were made, because the only way then, if major changes were made, would you have to literally deny the transaction and send it back through the full approval cycle again. So we've added a custom rule area, very similar to our current area in the requisition where we can do custom approvals. So there will be another set built into Queue Manager right after the queue management is done that allows for additional approvals after the workload management is completed. So very excited about that. That helps with some compliance. It helps with dollar checks and things like that, depending on the changes that are made to a requisition when it's in that workflow queue management area. So excited to get that in. I talked to some folks earlier in the week and late last week about that. That'll be coming into UAT very shortly, and we will be reaching out, doing some demonstrations for you guys, and then turning those organizations that have access to queue management loose into UAT to work on those and go forward. I will tell you, we're really going to focus on our existing queue management entities first. Okay, so if you've seen this and you're like, wow, I'd like to explore this, sit tight. Let us work with some of our existing entities who are using Queue Manager. We really want to focus on getting them, configured, tested, letting them really test out, run through business scenarios with that and support them. And then we can open it up and talk to some of you who I may have piqued your interest today, as this does expand the possibilities for things you can do with your requisitions. So it kind of opens up a little bit more flexibility and may help you tackle some of your existing business challenges that we haven't been able to tackle yet. But again, please, we're going to focus on some of the existing entities that are using the workload management functionality, get them comfortable, and then we'll be able to move on to others. But that's coming in. The release date for our May release is May 30th. That's a Thursday night. So you guys will see these changes coming in the 31st, which is a Friday morning. And then again, worth repeating here, the deactivation of those large dollars approvals, which I talked about earlier. That's going to be happening the night of the 30th. So on the 31st, any requisition generated and submitted on the 31st, after the night of the 30th, those large dollar approvals will not be firing. They're just going to automatically kind of slide through there. So again, more to come on that from a communication perspective. One last communication before we go live. So that's kind of our release highlights. Again, I don't have a slide for it. I mentioned it before I move on to some other issues we're kind of tracking and trying to work for you guys. The July release we'll have, and we'll talk about that when we come back and do our August user group. Again, that'll be our next user group. Or wait, excuse me. This is May, June. Our July user group, excuse me. We will do a July user group. I will talk about the June release in the July user group. But quite honestly, guys, don't need to put a slide up for it. The focus, will be several things going on. But one of the big highlighted focused item will be electronic invoicing coming into production. Now, again, that doesn't impact you in July. And I know your AP staff, we understand your accounts payable staff and their ability to handle electronic invoices probably isn't that great in the June, July timeframe. But that's kind of our goal, to get the functionality into production. It'll be there, no impact to you, until we roll it out and make it available for the suppliers that you do business with. So more to come on that as we go through the summer months. But again, excited for that June, likely July release when we get electronic invoicing going. So excited for that. So before we get to the demo, just a handful of additional slides, kind of talking about some other high priority issues that we're tracking or have been tracking over the last several months. One of them is this requisition approval, the additional logic. Again, we kind of talked about that above. May 30th is when that is going in. I don't have great news for you and for your end users on our ability from a punch out perspective to edit. We call it return cart. It's this concept of being able to start a punch out transaction, bring items back to Eva and go, oh, geez, I need to make an edit. I need to remove items, add additional items. Being able to return to the cart on the supplier shopping site, make those additions. And basically when you're in draft mode, being able to go back and forth as much as you want, from a draft perspective. So that's still outstanding. I do know that Barb, Kelly Gill, her deputy, Tony, myself, will be getting ourselves in front of Ivalua a little bit later in May. And this is going to be one of the high-end issues that we're going to discuss with them, from an Ivalua perspective. It is not, unfortunately, something that CGI can configure for us on their end. We really do need Ivalua to be involved with that. And we're going to do our best to continue applying pressure through as many channels as we can to get this resolved. And hopefully I'll have more for you when we gather again for the July user group. And then again, some high priority issues, electronic invoices, where I have mid-July on here. That could come as early as late June. We're really thinking just adding some additional runway and testing time for us over that June, July timeframe. And looking like mid-July when that's going to be in production. And then again, we'll spend a fair, sorry, my watch just went off. It's decided it wanted to talk to me. But again, we'll have a lot of conversations when we kind of settle on a July date for the user group. Of course, that first week in July is July 4th. So I'll work with Kim and the team, and we'll get a user group date at a reasonable time there in July. I'm also going to be going to the beach in July. So maybe the entire user group should just meet me at the beach. And we can do the user group down there at the beach in July. That would be fun. But in any case, stay tuned for that. And again, you're probably getting sick of me saying it. We're gonna look at those updated configurations today and kind of look at what the e-invoicing starting to look like. I'm getting excited. It's starting to look really good. So moving on, some additional high priority issues that we're very focused on. Purchase order to pay transparency reporting. A lot of you guys have been contacted about this. This is a report that does your rec, your PO, your receipt, your voucher, voucher date, check number, check date, payment amount, kind of tying that all together in one beautiful string, including Bank of America P card data. So for a particular agency, for a particular entity, really getting a full view of the full procure to pay scope, and really tying all those transactions together. Vita and DGS are live, so big thanks to Vita and DGS. I know there are others that we are working with and that are getting ready to come online. But again, stay tuned for that as we continue to work on that throughout 2024. And quite honestly, that's probably going to go into 2025. But a lot of value there from a transparency perspective, a lot of value there from an audit perspective, a lot of value there. Just kind of seeing the picture, the full picture of, PO all the way down into those payment details. And then we are getting serious about analytics and not the data warehouse piece I'm talking about. We got a lot of reports. You hit the report center and you go into our little report area and you can run all those various reports. This is analytics that are baked into Eva itself. So when you're logged into Eva, all those dashboards and screens, you've got data and widgets and charts and some things on supplier records, contract records, requisitions, orders, and then kind of the main dashboard when you log in. We've got the ability to do various analytics depending on like who you are, what your role is within Eva, or that it's enterprise, like everybody gets to see some things. Our focus initially, we have ideas. Oh boy, do we have ideas about all the different areas, from sourcing to contracting to suppliers. But the first one we're going to focus on is analytics around REX. Really what I think is some great information about aging and cycle time and how old requisitions are and how long it's taking to get them approved. So some really, really neat metrics, particularly for maybe your procurement shop, maybe even, maybe an agency head. Maybe they don't care so much. But certainly your procurement shop, from kind of a cycle time and aging, where things are, how many recs you have in process, how many recs are completed, all sorts of neat stuff. We're really, really, really focused on that. We've been pressing CGI very hard to get this moving forward for us. From my perspective, we're ready to get rolling on that, and we're working with CGI to get a schedule in place to get those things to you. So more to come on that as well. Again, our next user group meeting is actually will be July. If we get something in before then, just, watch your email. Kim will get, through the Eva Extra. Certainly we'll do an Eva Extra in June, just to keep you guys updated with everything that's going on in Eva. But we could do a special one or tie that into the Eva Extra in June if we get these requisition analytics moving. Because what I want you guys to do is I want to put some of these things out in front of you and then get your feedback. This was great. This didn't have any value. I don't care. Whatever it is, we want to hear back from you as we start to roll that stuff out. So excited to begin leveraging our dashboards and analytics. And there's a lot within the iValuate tool. So those are some high priority issues that we're really, really, really focused on here over the next several weeks and months as we continue to add some spice and some cool things into Eva. So continuing on, some next up issues that we have and some things we're looking into doing, looking into scheduling. Something from a P card perspective, an indicator, a warning, a message, a default, whatever it is, not only to help your requisitioners realize or be conscious that they should be using or need to use a P card on a transaction. But quite honestly, also for your approvers. Right now, in order, from a requisition perspective, and it's not a big deal, but from a requisition perspective, if I'm an approver and I need to make sure the P card's on the transaction, I actually got to pull the rec up and then I got to hit that. There's another tab I got to hit to see that. So something to kind of help you right there on the rec header. So you can just be like, oh, great, the P card's on the transaction. I can approve this and move it on. So we're looking into that, what the best method to solve that. Staying in that vein, if I have a multiple line item requisition and an attachment ends up on that requisition, line item, like let's say I have 10 line items on my requisition and I put an attachment on line 8. It's very difficult for an approver, quite honestly, probably for a supplier, to realize there's an attachment on line 8. So can we put something there, a paper clip, a star, something that tells us, hey, line 8's got an attachment. You need to check that out. So that's something we're interested in doing for you guys as well. Also, this has been rolling for a while. And again, these are next up issues. I don't necessarily have a schedule for you, but certainly things we're thinking about, we've got in the pipeline, we're looking at solutioning. When somebody leaves, and maybe they've done a lot of purchasing transactions for you, doesn't mean the transactions go away. But our requisition search within EVA, it's not the easiest in the world. Now, you can always go run a report. You can go to the report center and run a report and pull those transactions up. But our search filtering, we make it very, very difficult. If a user's blocked, deleted, disabled, they don't become a search option. So if, I can't go in and say, show me all the transactions that Shane has done if Shane is no longer at the agency. It makes it difficult. Again, doesn't mean the transactions are gone. It just makes the search a little bit more difficult if you want to target a particular user to pull up their transactions within EVA. So just something we're looking at there. And then receiving on negative line items. That could be rebates, discounts, things like that. We're hoping that's resolved as part of electronic invoicing. That's still kind of an outstanding issue for us that we're looking at, but certainly something that's on our mind and that we're tracking and looking at a solution for. So that's really the update there on everything that's kind of going on and what we're going to see kind of coming into the summer. So a lot of great items, a lot of great things in place. And then, obviously, just driving it home, electronic invoicing, also a big focus for us this summer as well. So I am going to stop sharing very, very briefly. I'm going to close out my PowerPoint here, and I'm going to shift. We're going to go into demonstration mode, and we're going to take a look at invoicing. And bear with me here while I pull up my screen. There we go, and I'm going to share. Get you guys out of the way. And I'll give it a second. It looks like it has refreshed and that we are in what we're calling our evolution environment. I've said it to some folks. You could think of it as a demonstration environment, but we are into an area where I have invoicing turned on. So again, if you didn't get a chance to go through the demonstration or see the demonstration, or you weren't at the user group, I did do a demonstration of kind of out of the box electronic invoicing. Let me slip on my glasses here. Of out of the box electronic invoicing back in March user group. We have done some configuration since then. I'm excited to show you. So we'll go in here. You'll notice there's a new link, and I am in it on the buying side. I'm in from a buyer's perspective. So we've got a new option here when invoicing is initiated that says invoicing and allows me to browse the invoices. I think one of the easiest areas to find and look at invoices is going in through my procurement link and going to browse orders. And I bring this up, and actually I've made a special search just so we can just see my orders. And if you There's a specific save you can do in your favorites. You can do all sorts of cool stuff in your favorites. So these are the orders I've cut in this evolution environment. Excuse me, that you'll see a lot of repeats and some stuff like that because it is a test environment for us. But I think this is just such a great view of the new invoicing feature and what that does for us. So in this case, now again, I've done some test requisitions. We're getting ready to do some work with DGS tomorrow, and they're all the same amount. But you get the idea here. For a particular PO, I can see the ordered amount, how much has been received, and how much has been invoiced, which I think is just a fantastic view. Scrolling down here, there's have done a demonstration specifically for state police and some examples where you start to see the numbers changing. So for this particular PO, I've got ordered 6,500. I've been invoiced, but oh dear, we haven't done any receiving, so that's bad. So that means I've been invoiced for something that has yet to be received. So again, a very quick glance on the condition that a particular order is in from a receiving perspective and from an invoicing perspective. There's another great view I can dive into, and this is a change that was recently made. I can dive into a particular purchase order. And within the purchase order, I have a great summary of everything that went on. Certainly, I can go in and check the workflow and see who did approvals and things like that. But I've also got an area where I can go and see my receipts. This order, pretty basic. I had one receipt where I received the total amount of this particular order. And now I also have an invoicing tab where I can see my invoice. And I can see in this case that I'm still in review. That invoice hasn't been finalized yet. So that is short for accounts payable review. And now I'm going to dive into this invoice and show you some of the configuration. And hopefully for you guys that were with us back in March, you'll notice some of the changes that have come into play. So I will click on this invoice. And you'll see some of the configurations where I'll close this in a minute. There is an area on the invoice where eventually we're going to want to sync up payment data. So not only will you have the PO, the receipt, the invoice, we'll also be able to pull payment information. Imagine having a screen on the invoice where the voucher date, check number, check date, and payment amount are available within EVA. That would be fantastic, as well as what condition this is in from an approval flow perspective. So we'll look at that in a minute. I'm going to shrink this left-hand menu just to get those out of the way so we can get a little bit better look at the invoice itself. We've got some areas here, and again, this is the buyer view, but we've got some areas here. We've got the invoice attachment itself, where if there was a PDF version of the invoice, maybe the supplier, generates a electronic copy or, an electronic paper copy of the invoice, they could attach it there and send it back to you. There could be additional attachments. All you got to do is open those up. In this case, I did not have an invoice attachment and any additional attachments. Scrolling down, you got your invoice header. This is an internal supplier number that's here. The invoice number itself is here, invoice 133 in this case. So this invoice number is very similar to a rec, PO, contract number, things like that. The currency we're in, there's the invoice ID. Again, this is the supplier provided number. The invoice date, which is 5/3. Since this was not a paper invoice, you do have the ability on the buying side to flip a PO. You would put in a separate, the invoice date. The invoice itself might be dated 5/3, but maybe we didn't receive the invoice until 5/7. So you could have a difference in the dates. That invoice receipt date is very important. If it wasn't initially done electronically and you were making an electronic invoice on behalf or, flipping the invoice yourself, there's some supplier information. Scrolling down, you see my PO line items. I can get those sorted there. There we go. So line 1, line 2, line 3. So I can sort those PO line items. You notice if you were with us before, the tax information's been removed. We got that cleaned up so you're not seeing taxes. And then our diff column here, where you can do, really helping you from a three-way match perspective. So you'll notice diving into this invoice, I had a couple areas where I'm making sure things are clean. Do I have my receipt? Do I have, does my PO and my receipt and my invoice amount match up? In this case, we do. So this is for a particular line item. Ordered 5, received 5, and got invoiced, the total invoice amount, totals up to my total received and total ordered amount. So some things helping you there, kind of diff some things up. And then some additional items down here. Allocations are brought in so that there are allocations. Now, again, I'm in a test environment, so my allocations are crazy. I got every allocation under the sun. But again, your custom entity allocations will be pulled in here. So you can see that. Payment information, again, kind of tied to the payment data here. This does give you the ability where if you're running some business scenarios, and I'll talk about this in a minute when we look at the approval flow, which we've updated, you can say, now this was a PO, a PCO, a P card was not associated with this purchase order. So we were expecting an invoice and then expecting to cut a check or, do an EDI payment back to the supplier. But I can, during approval, say, no, we're going to go ahead and put this on a P card. And I could mark this invoice as such and notify the supplier that happened. This exception area, we do have some supplier performance and things like that. So that's kind of tied to that. We won't focus on that today. And then the information areas, who created the invoice. So Charles Dennison was my supplier. So back on 5.3, this was created, modified, and given to me on 5.3 from my supplier. So you get a little information about what happened there. From an approved, so that's it. That's an invoice. There's not much to it. Pretty basic stuff. Now, again, this is an AP review. Put my mouse there and you can see it's in. So accounts payable is reviewing it. So I get the opportunity to approve or reject the invoice. If I hit reject, and you get to type in a reason, right? So you could say, we didn't receive all our items. Your invoice amount was too much. We can message back to the supplier about why we're rejecting and get them, they can correct the invoice on their end and resubmit it. So if they got an amount wrong, they're missing a line item, they haven't shipped the goods yet, reject it, send it back to them. We haven't received the goods. We haven't received the products yet. And don't send us an invoice until we do, until we've received everything. So, and you can do that direct messaging back to the supplier. So I'm going to cancel. We're not going to reject this one. And I want to show you guys the approval flow because that was one area we kind of had an out of the box approval. We hadn't done any fixes to the approval flow. And I'm going to show you that today. So I'll open this back up and we'll go into the approval. So you can see I'm parked where it's orange. I'm parked in the accounts payable shop. So we've parked it in the accounts payable shop. Couple of things that are going on. It's a very basic approval flow to start with. Okay. Not much complexity to it. And that's because our focus for the launch here this summer 2024 and going into the rest of 2024 is really getting this launched, getting it out in front of you guys, letting you give us your feedback, getting those business process changes, and being focused on EVA generated POs and allowing a supplier to flip a purchase order back to us. Okay. We have the ability long-term. We can do custom approval flow, just like you can in your requisition. So, maybe there would be an approval flow you'd want to do, around cost codes or funds or something in the allocation. I don't know that we'd ever want to get into doing approval flow based on commodity, but you get the idea. We could do some customizations around this. But again, Our focus right now is a pretty basic approval flow. So what's going to happen, an invoice is going to get submitted. And if that invoice, if that invoice, I want to say this right, is for a purchase order where it is a PCO, meaning a P card has been associated with the purchase order, we immediately say, whoa, this should have been paid by P card, and it goes into a bucket that notifies the supplier to charge the P card on the PO. And let me show you this real quick. I'm going to jump over to my browse invoices area, and I'll show you right here. This is an invoice that we got, and it says, hey, you need to charge the P card for this. You need to charge. Now, don't worry that there's some receiving missing, but again, you need to charge the P card on this. So we are sending a message back. And actually, let me show you what this one looks like from an approval perspective. It just jumps out and says, whoa, you got to charge the P card. And then once that P card has been charged, we can mark it as the P card has been charged. We can do that on our side. The supplier, and that's who we really want to do it. And we'll train to that. We're going to be doing our team. We were able to meet yesterday. We're getting a great plan together to engage the supplier community, to engage the suppliers that are doing business with us, to get them ready to go. And in this P card situation, if they get a message back from Eva that says, whoa, this is pending a P card charge, we're going to want that supplier to go into the PO, pull the P card, run the P card, and mark it as such, and mark it as charged. And then just like when a check is cut, I should have, don't have one on the first page. You see a lot of testing going on. Oh, there it is. There's one. I found one right here. Paid by P card. So it moves from pending to paid by P card. Okay. So we don't want to process those invoices through that are P card that, we should be paying by P card. We don't want a voucher and a check to be cut on those. So we've got some controls in place in the approval to take care of that. So let me dive back into the invoice we were looking at earlier. I believe it's this one right here. That was an AP review. So there we go. I'm back. So again, many different ways to navigate to invoices, many different ways to see them. So again, navigating back to this particular invoice we're looking at and going into the approval. This one's up for the AP to assign. It's very simple. A group of individuals, one individual, however you want to set that up, usually more than one is suggested. It'll dump into AP. They'll get it, review it, make sure everything's good. If they want to move it forward, there is a box here to assign it to the business owner. Just for kicks and grins today, I'll assign it to myself. You can do multiples. So let's say I wanted to put Tony on there. I think he's Anthony in here. Let's see. He comes up. Well, of course, he's not coming up. Let's see.
And Shane, while you're searching for that, we did get a question that we wanted to see if you might have the answer to, which is, can you change the allocations at this point, or will you have to stick with what was used when the requisition was first submitted and approved?
You can change the allocations. If you need to reallocate, you can do it on the invoice.
There you go, Sheila.
And then part of that there is, and I'm going to get to this in the approval in just a minute once I go through this. So great question. Tony is not set up with the accounts payable role. So I'll add Tracy Robinson here. It's an approval role. He's either not set up as a business review and approval or not set up for AP, which is fine. No big deal. I'll use Tracy Robinson. Hopefully you've had a chance to attend a session from Tracy. So I'm going to go ahead and I can do multiples. I can do, I could have 20 users in here if I wanted to. So I'm going to move this to myself and Tracy, and all I do at this point is approve. You get a little warning message. Make sure you have selected the business approver. And then that will move this invoice from AP to the business approver. Again, I'm in as an admin, and you'll see the status changes to business review. And from this point, whoever the business owner is can have a look at this invoice, make sure everything looks good, make sure we've received everything properly. And when that is good, we simply hit approve. And that moves it on out of the system. Now, for this particular, and this is what I wanted to talk about, especially when you start talking about allocations, not everyone has a finance system that we're connected to, but for those of you that do, we can send or will send or have the ability to send an okay to pay transaction, and we could integrate that into your finance system. So again, the back end of this approval flow is an integration connection where we're sending data up to your financial system for this particular invoice that has some key fields on it. I know I'm gonna miss some records on the record layout, but certainly the purchase order, the invoice number, amounts, dates, allocation information, particularly if you made a change on the invoice that you needed to adjust the allocations on the invoice, that would sync that data up to your financial system, allow you to have that information there, make those changes. And then at the end of that process, we want the payment information to come back so that we can automatically, once the payment is made and that data comes back from your financial system, mark this invoice as paid. For those of you that don't, maybe you're keying directly into Cardinal or you don't have an interface or integration set up, you do have the ability. You'll notice I'm in a manual situation here. I could just simply say, hey, I was able to verify, Fiscal was able to verify we are in a situation where this particular transaction has been paid, and you could just hit that and update that status to paid. And then if I take a look at my invoices, that particular transaction has been marked as paid. So again, that is kind of a look at some of the changes, adjustments, and things like that from our perspective. So kind of in summary here, there is not a ton to electronic invoicing. For those of you that do sourcing in EVA, maybe even requisitioning, there's a contracting, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts to those modules and to those functions. Invoicing, not much to it. You could come in, supplier is going to flip that invoice back to you. You're going to review it, verify that everything is good. You see anything wrong, you can reject it, back to the supplier and tell them what's going on. There will be email notifications going. You have an invoice to review. That's both for the AP role and for the business review staff. And it also ends up in your to-do list. Let's see if I've got one over here. I'm sure I do. Well, I got some purchase requisitions. I probably got all sorts of stuff in my to-do list. There you go. EVA, that's what it would look like. There's here, let me put there, EVA invoice approval. So they'll come and do your to-do list if you have an invoice approval to handle. And you'll get an email notice and everything like that. So lots of things starting to come together. And again, those P card, if we go down the P card path, those notices are going back out to the supplier as well. Rejections, you need to charge the P card. But again, outside of that, not a lot of complexity to this. You review it, you don't like it, you reject it, you like it, you approve it, and you move it on. All right. So again, that's kind of our user group for today. Again, was very excited to show you that. I didn't flip over to the supplier side like I did before, but really the supplier, they're seeing the same view you are. Their only difference is certainly we're really going to be working with our suppliers to drive them to flip the invoices. I will show you one little nuance to this, and it's a good nuance. But again, we need to be careful with this because we want our suppliers doing the work, right? There is the option on the buying side. You'll see this little dollar sign there. We can flip invoices. So we can, on our side, enter electronic invoices and get that keyed in, particularly if we have a supplier maybe that is reluctant to use, or it's new for them, or they're very infrequent EVA users. But again, we really want to drive our supplier community to do that work for us. But you can flip an invoice, and it's just, I don't know if I have any, here's one right here that's not invoiced. You just simply click add invoice to this order, click it, and boom, there you go. I'm in an invoice, right? I'm ready to roll. So if I got a invoice mailed to me, I could scan it, I could attach the invoice, and then of course it's flipping the PO for me. So my invoice ought to be matching my PO data. And again, that is our big focus, is PO flip. This functionality is robust for invoicing, as far as there can be non-purchase order invoices, credit notes, which we'll deal with. We'll talk about that in a subsequent training or user group. The integration, all sorts of things like that. But our real focus is PO flip here. But again, that is invoicing. So I'm just going to dive out of there. Creates a little draft for me there, which is no big deal. But that is invoicing. I'm going to stop sharing for the time being. And not only is that invoicing, but that's our user group for today. So we ran over just a little bit. I think we booked till 11:30, which is fine. If we end a little early, that's no big deal. And I didn't know if there's any other questions or comments we wanted to handle right now, or if we wanted to tell everybody happy Tuesday.
We did have a lot of individual questions behind the scenes. So shout out to Tony and to Barb for tag teaming on those. Just a couple of things to highlight of questions that we received. So reports, and Tony answered that for one of the users here that says, yeah, we do intend to have invoicing reports and add invoicing data to existing reports. So you guys can be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, part of the work, and I'm so glad that got brought up, is we are capturing the invoice transaction in the data warehouse. So we'll have it. So imagine those receiving reports. We can have additional information pulling in the invoice data into those receiving reports. Also, the procure to pay transparency reports. Right now, we pull in invoice data, and it's you get the invoice number and things like that. Well, if you're using EVA electronic invoicing, then that would be another piece of data that you could drive down on, like you can with the PO. So thank you for asking that question. That's a great question. But data warehouse is absolutely going to be included with that.
Then the other question that I think is worth just kind of restating our timeline for rollout and the expectant users and that type of thing. So right now we said, hey, let us know if you're interested, right? And then it's
right now is let us know if you're interested, but there'll be more to come on that as we are internally planning how this rollout's going to look. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that.
And just to reiterate, I know Shane mentioned it, but for our suppliers, we're also planning to have everything we need to support them with using this new feature, introducing it to them, making sure that they have the proper training. As Shane mentioned, it seems pretty simplistic to us, but we've been playing around and trying to use it.
That's right.
Or in my case, trying to break it wherever I can.
Yeah, and again, it's worth reiterating. We had a great meeting yesterday with Kim, Lakia White, Miranda Bowling, some names you might know, Tony, myself, really starting to talk supplier. What do we need to get together for them? When are we going to communicate? How's that going to look? What sort of training materials do they need? How are we going to support them, and beginning to get that plan together for our supplier community as well? How we're going to do outreach. So, we bring your agency on. We're going to want to run your purchase order data, see who your suppliers are, engage with those suppliers. The good news is, as more agencies come on and more suppliers begin flipping, and using the invoice functionality on their end, you start to narrow your engagement, because there are a lot of repeat suppliers, especially some of our larger suppliers. So that's all good news as well. But again, we're putting a great plan together. We'll be sharing that with you guys probably here over the summer at some point as we begin to roll those out.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to take a minute to let everybody know, if you're not aware, we do have free virtual training for suppliers on a weekly basis. We do an intro to selling to Virginia workshop. It's really high level. It's the basics of someone getting into government sector selling. When I say we, I mean me. So I conduct that weekly, and then we follow that up with a generating leads workshop, which talks about diving into the public resources that are available for businesses to understand who's purchasing, what solicitations are being issued, to look at contract information and reporting associated with historic orders. So if you have a supplier and you want them to get using EVA and more familiar, then this is a great place for them to begin that journey. And we do talk about some of the training resources that are available to them to maintain their account. So please keep in mind that that is something that you can always push a supplier to attend if they're interested in getting registered. And then we do have our supplier training page, which has resources for them. Just like with you, we have supplier training materials, and then those are going to be made up of videos and quick reference guides, QRGs. And we also have supplier resources and supplier tips. So please make sure that you're pointing them to those resources if they're not aware that they're on our website. All right. Thank you so much, Shane, for all the great information. Thank you, Barb and Tony, for helping with all of the great questions. Oh, wait, sorry, one more. Tony, did you answer that? Sorry. I saw we got one more question. You got it. Okay.
Oh yeah, it was just somebody was asking where they can find the supplier training. So I just gave them the link on the EVA homepage. And is that also though where they have if they want to sign up for the your trainings?
That
Is that
is
on
off of the EVA website homepage. It says
Okay, good.
EVA Supplier Outreach Events. It's a calendar of events. Basically, the workshops are every Wednesday, with the exception of a few weeks where they need to go on Tuesday. And then I'm going to commit Shane to maybe July 16th for our next buyer user group, but that is tentative. So we will look at our calendars and see if we can sync up. But that is potentially a date for July, and then look for that EVA Extra to come out in June. Thank you guys so much again for attending today, participating with us before we officially kicked off the recording, and for always being interactive both in the chat and with those great questions that you have. We really appreciate it.
And good luck to all the parents and friends and family who have kids graduating and graduations and switching schools and all the end of school year and all that
and
stuff. So
enjoy your summer if you can. Enjoy your
yeah,
summer, and we will see you next user group in July. Have a great rest of your day. Bye,
thanks
guys.
everybody.
Thanks.